Organized for quick browsing, use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 15th, 2026, good morning, and welcome to Qnotables 4 a.m. Talking Points Live. Our top story begins in Beijing, where President Donald J. Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped a major summit after extended high-level talks covering trade, Taiwan, Iran, energy, aircraft purchases, and the future of the U.S. China relationship. Trump called the meetings productive, while Beijing emphasized stability and controlled competition. The message from the trip is clear. Washington and Beijing are not friends, but both sides know the world is watching every word, every handshake, and every deal. President Trump told Sean Hannity that Xi Jinping committed to withholding military equipment from Iran. That is a major foreign policy development because China remains one of Iran's most important economic partners. If Beijing follows through, it strengthens the pressure campaign against Tehran and puts China on record after the summit. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says U.S. policy toward Taiwan remains unchanged after the Trump-Xi meeting. Rubio said America's position is steady and warned that any Chinese move to take Taiwan by force would be a serious mistake. Taiwan remains one of the central flashpoints in the U.S. China standoff. President Trump has now departed Beijing following the China summit. The visit focused on direct leader-to-leader diplomacy with Xi Jinping, and Trump highlighted trade, energy, Boeing aircraft, Iran, and American strength as key themes from the trip. Trump also responded to Xi's comment about America being a declining nation. Trump said Xi was referring to the damage done during the Biden years, not the current state of the United States. Trump framed the meeting as recognition of America's renewed power and said Xi congratulated him on the country's recent successes. Trump says China has committed to ordering 200 Boeing jets. He called it a win for American manufacturing, American workers, and American exports. If completed, the deal would be one of the major economic deliverables from the Beijing summit. Reports from the Trump trip say Chinese security personnel interfered with members of the traveling press corps in Beijing. The moment shows the pressure surrounding foreign media access inside China and the level of control Beijing places around major diplomatic events. Trump's team used temporary phones during the China trip, a standard but important security step when traveling in high-risk surveillance environments. The practice limits exposure to foreign intelligence collection and protects sensitive communications during foreign travel. Domestic politics, Qnotables. Washington. CIA Director John Ratcliffe made a rare visit to Cuba and met with senior Cuban officials, including Raul Castro's grandson. U.S. and Cuban officials say the discussions involved intelligence cooperation, security, economic stability, and Washington's demand that Cuba stop serving as a safe haven for U.S. adversaries. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Cuba rejected a $100 million U.S. humanitarian aid package meant for the Cuban people. The offer was tied to direct distribution through trusted organizations rather than regime control. Rubio says the aid remains available, but Havana refused the deal. Cuba released a political prisoner as a U.S. government aircraft landed in Havana during high-stakes negotiations. The move comes during rare direct contact between Washington and Havana, with the Trump administration pressing Cuba on political prisoners, economic reform, and security concerns. Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson are warning CIA Director John Ratcliffe against retaliation involving a COVID-19 whistleblower. The warning follows Senate testimony from CIA officer James Erdman III, who alleged a multi-agency effort to hide or distort information about COVID origins and gain-of-function research. The CIA pushed back against the COVID whistleblower hearing, calling it political theater. The hearing featured allegations that intelligence assessments were altered, documents were withheld, and officials resisted transparency on COVID origins. Senator Rand Paul says the investigation is not finished. A U.S. lawmaker is threatening action against the CIA over JFK and MKUltra files. The dispute centers on claims that CIA records were taken back from a review process tied to declassification. Lawmakers are demanding answers and warning that subpoenas may follow. The U.S. Senate has approved a resolution to withhold senators' pay during future government shutdowns. Under the measure, paychecks would be held during a shutdown and released after funding is restored. The rule takes effect after the November general election and applies to senators. Representative Thomas Massie has introduced the Americans Insist on Political Agent Clarity Act. The bill targets foreign influence and political agent transparency, aiming to make it clearer when people or organizations are acting on behalf of outside interests in American politics. Representative Andy Ogles introduced the Assimilation Act, an immigration overhaul aimed at ending chain migration, tightening moral character standards, and changing how applicants are screened. The bill is being framed as a major reset of the legal immigration process. Fairfax County Commonwealth's attorney Steve Descano testified on Capitol Hill as lawmakers questioned whether his office gave preferential treatment to defendants in the country illegally. Descano denied the accusation, but the hearing kept Fairfax County's criminal justice policies in the national spotlight. The Fairfax County hearing also focused on claims that illegal aliens make up a major share of the county's population. Lawmakers pressed local officials on crime, sanctuary policies, and whether public safety is being weakened by political priorities. Vice President J.D. Vance confronted a reporter over coverage of alleged election fraud in Maine. Vance argued the media was minimizing serious concerns, while Republicans are using the case to press for tighter voting rules nationwide. Protesters at a J.D. Vance speech were seen holding 8647 signs before walking away after cameras focused on them. The moment spread online because many viewers read the signs as hostile political messaging aimed at President Trump. The DOJ case involving lawfare claims against Jeff Clark has been assigned to Judge Richard Leon. Clark's supporters say the case is part of a broader campaign against Trump-aligned legal figures, while the case now moves through federal court. Nancy Pelosi accepted a Democracy Defender Award, drawing praise from supporters and criticism from opponents who say Washington's political class continues to reward itself, while public trust keeps falling. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin appeared for an interview focused on the agency's direction under Trump. Zeldin highlighted deregulation, energy policy, and the administration's argument that environmental rules should not crush American business or household budgets.
At shop.isawaya.com, everything you buy supports Acun.top, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Acun Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toaster and tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Acun Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Acun's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isawaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Acun.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Boards, May 15, 2026, reports say veterans can now receive medical marijuana recommendations through the VA. The move would mark a major shift for veterans seeking alternatives for pain, PTSD symptoms, and other service-connected conditions. A Defending Education report accuses the Southern Poverty Law Center's Learning for Justice program of pushing a radical agenda into K-12 schools. The report claims classroom content is being used to shape children's politics under the label of tolerance and inclusion. Scholastic is facing backlash after reports accuse the major K-12 publisher of promoting anti-ICE and immigration activist messaging to children. The issue puts classroom books, immigration politics, and parental rights back in the national spotlight. A New Hampshire woman says Planet Fitness canceled her membership after she reported a person she believed was male in the women's locker room. The case has reignited debate over locker room access, women's privacy, and corporate gender identity policies. Election integrity. Jose Ceballos, the former mayor of Coldwater, Kansas, has been detained by ICE after pleading guilty to election-related charges tied to voting as a non-citizen. His case has become a national example in the debate over voter rolls, citizenship checks, and election integrity. Vice President J.D. Vance says the Maine election fraud story is not a minor issue and should not be dismissed by the media. The case is now being used as another example in the push for stronger voter verification, cleaner rolls, and better election enforcement. International conflict. Foreign policy. The U.S. Army has canceled the planned deployment of more than 4,000 soldiers from the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division to Poland. The decision affects a major armored rotation and comes as the Pentagon reassesses force posture across Europe. A NATO member government collapsed after political fallout from Ukrainian drone incidents near its border with Russia. The dispute raised new questions about air defense failures, drone incursions, NATO security, and the spillover risk from the war in Ukraine. Andriy Yermak, former top aide to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, is facing corruption charges tied to a wider probe into senior Ukrainian officials. The case centers on money laundering and corruption allegations linked to Ukraine's political inner circle. Ukrainian drone crews destroyed 120 Russian targets overnight, setting a new battlefield record. The strike shows how drones continue to reshape the war by hitting armor, logistics, and exposed positions at scale. European Union imports of Russian liquefied natural gas hit record levels in the first quarter of 2026, rising 16% year over year. The increase comes despite Europe's stated goal of phasing out Russian fossil fuels and shows how energy dependence continues to complicate sanctions policy. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte wants member countries to commit 0.25% of GDP toward Ukraine. The proposal would deepen Europe's long-term financial role in the war and increase pressure on governments already facing budget problems and voter backlash. Defense officials are promoting a $1.5 trillion investment as a generational down payment on America's national defense. The spending push is focused on rebuilding military strength, modernizing weapon systems, and preparing for threats from China, Russia, Iran, and other adversaries. Saudi Arabia is floating a regional non-aggression pact with Iran and other Middle Eastern states. The proposal is being compared to a Helsinki-style security framework aimed at reducing the risk of wider conflict after the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. The Vatican is facing controversy after Iran's ambassador received the Grand Cross of the Pontifical Order of Pius IX. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See pushed back on claims that it was a special honor, saying the award is routinely given to accredited ambassadors after more than 2 years of service. CENTCOM says U.S. forces have redirected 72 commercial ships and disabled 4 threats. The update shows the scale of U.S. military activity protecting maritime traffic as regional conflict continues to threaten shipping routes. CENTCOM also posted footage of a U.S. Air Force F-16 taking off from a base in the Middle East for a night flight. The message was simple: American air power remains active in the region as tensions with Iran and hostile actors continue. The FBI is offering a $200,000 reward for a former Air Force intelligence officer accused of spying for Iran. Authorities say the suspect remains wanted, and the case highlights the continuing threat of insider access being used by foreign intelligence services. Catherine Herridge released Part 2 of her Maduro raid investigation, focusing on allegations about intelligence sources, DEA whistleblowers, and who should receive credit for information tied to operations against Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. Netanyahu revealed a secret visit to the United Arab Emirates. The disclosure points to ongoing backchannel diplomacy in the Middle East as Israel, the Gulf states, Iran, and Washington continue maneuvering through a fast-changing regional crisis. Data showing fewer Americans view Israel as an ally is drawing attention amid rising debate over U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. The shift reflects growing public fatigue with foreign aid, war involvement, and questions over whether American interests are being placed first. A new media bias analysis claims mainstream coverage continues to favor pro-Israel framing in major conflicts. The report is being used by critics who argue American audiences are not getting a balanced view of events in Gaza, Iran, and the wider Middle East. Canadian federal committees are facing backlash over discussions tied to expanding MAID, including concerns about mature minors and infants. Critics say Canada's assisted death policy is moving into dangerous territory and demands a national Framing moral in major
reckoning.
conflicts. The report is being used.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's May 15, 2026 in Romania, hundreds of thousands of citizens are demanding the suspension of President Nicu or Dan over alleged serious violations. The dispute adds another layer of political instability in Eastern Europe at a time of war pressure, migration tension, and NATO concerns. Spanish authorities say they have detected more than 600 illicit drug boats operating around the Strait of Gibraltar. The numbers show how traffickers continue to exploit one of the world's busiest maritime choke point. A bright object seen streaking across the central United States was first mistaken for a comet, but officials later identified it as debris from a Chinese rocket. The incident raised fresh questions about space debris, tracking systems, and foreign objects re-entering over American skies. A new report revisits how Russia once controlled a large piece of Wyoming's uranium industry through the Uranium One controversy. The story is back in focus as lawmakers and state officials emphasize energy security, domestic mining, and keeping strategic minerals under American control. Crime, courts. Corruption. A New York man has been convicted of acting as an illegal agent of China in connection with a secret Chinese police station in Manhattan's Chinatown. Prosecutors say Lu Jianwang worked on behalf of China's Ministry of Public Security and helped target a pro-democracy activist in the United States. The founder and owner of Health Splash, Brett Blackman, has been convicted in a Medicare fraud conspiracy involving more than $1 billion. Federal prosecutors say the scheme targeted Medicare through unnecessary medical equipment and kickbacks, making it one of the largest healthcare fraud cases in recent memory. Dana Williamson, former chief of staff to California Governor Gavin Newsom, has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, filing a false tax return, and lying to federal investigators. Prosecutors say the case involves stolen campaign funds, false filings, and a broader political corruption scandal in California. Former Waco attorney Adam Hoffman has begun serving a 60-day jail sentence after pleading guilty to indecent assault and displaying harmful material to a minor. The case drew outrage because Hoffman originally faced far more serious charges, and critics say the sentence does not match the damage done to the victim. A Philippine politician wanted by the International Criminal Court escaped after gunfire erupted inside the Senate complex. The incident raised major questions about security, political protection, and whether international warrants are being seriously enforced. Claims of a CIA-style raid at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence sparked major online attention, but officials and later reporting pushed back on that version of events. The story now centers on internal tension, interagency disputes, and how fast rumors move when intelligence agencies are involved. Cook County is facing new scrutiny after a report showed that about 8% of people on electronic monitoring are currently missing or unaccounted for. That means hundreds of defendants are supposed to be monitored, but are not where the system says they should be. Illegal immigrants have been charged with capital murder in a shooting case now drawing national attention. The case is fueling renewed debate over border enforcement, criminal background screening, and whether repeat offenders are being removed fast enough. A massive fraud case is drawing attention after reports described a couple accused of using criminal proceeds to fund a luxury lifestyle. Prosecutors say the scheme involved taxpayer money, lavish spending, and a level of fraud that stunned investigators. In the United Kingdom, a Sikh man is accused of stabbing an 18-year-old university student to death with an 8-inch ceremonial knife after claiming he had been racially abused. The case is moving through court and has drawn attention because of the weapon, the victim's age, and the claimed motive. Business, whole markets, economy. Markets rallied as the Dow jumped more than 370 points and moved back above 50,000, while the S&P 500 posted its first close above 7,500. Investors pointed to tech strength, earnings, and optimism around U.S. China talks as key drivers behind the move. Reyes Coca-Cola Bottling will close its Ventura, California facility after more than 114 years of operation. The company says the shutdown is part of consolidation, while workers and local residents are watching another long-running California operation come to an end. Honda reported a major annual loss, described as its first full-year loss in company history. The automaker pointed to heavy electric vehicle costs, business pressures, and tariff-related challenges as it tries to reset strategy in a changing global market. Reports say Kevin Warsh is close to taking over as Federal Reserve Chair. Warsh would inherit major decisions on interest rates, inflation, banking stability, and whether the Fed keeps tightening or begins a more aggressive shift. Reports say taxpayer-backed home buying assistance during the Biden administration helped some non-U.S. citizens access housing support. The story is now fueling debate over whether American tax dollars should prioritize American citizens first during a housing affordability crisis. Tech, JAR AI, drones. Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have introduced legislation to pause new AI data center construction. They argue a moratorium is needed until national safeguards are in place for workers, consumers, energy use, and environmental concerns. The proposal would directly hit one of the fastest-growing sectors in tech infrastructure. Anthropic and the Gates Foundation announced a $200 million four-year AI partnership focused on health, education, life sciences, and economic mobility. The deal includes grant funding, cloud usage credits, and technical support for programs in the United States and abroad. Project Ultra is aiming to normalize drone operations in shared airspace. The initiative involves the FAA, defense partners, test sites, and industry players working on scalable systems for drone integration, logistics, and counter-drone coordination as unmanned aircraft become a bigger part of American airspace. Closing segment. The thread also included meme drops and cultural commentary, showing again how online news communities blend hard reporting, open-source research, political satire, and rapid response media into one continuous information stream. That is the rundown for this edition of Qnotables 4 a.m. Talking Points Live. The top story is Trump's Beijing summit with Xi, but the larger pattern is bigger than one meeting. Foreign powers are moving, Washington is under pressure, courts are filling with corruption cases, technology is accelerating, and the American people are being asked to pay attention. Share the show, subscribe, and stay sharp.
Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.